Nietzsche's Ubermensch, a path to personal salvation. Welcome to Orion Philosophy, a place where we dive into practical wisdom that can be applied to day-to-day living. Today we turn our attention to Friedrich Nietzsche's famous figure, the Ubermensch, or Overman, introduced in his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. At first glance the word might suggest a caped superhero, but Nietzsche was after something entirely different. The Ubermensch is a symbol of human potential, a picture of what any of us could become if we are willing to step beyond the safe territory of inherited opinions and automatic social conformity. To appreciate why Nietzsche thought such a figure was necessary, we have to look at the intellectual landscape of his era. In the late 19th century, the traditional cornerstones of Western life, organized religion, established morality, and classical philosophy, were no longer commanding unquestioned loyalty. Nietzsche's dramatic proclamation that God is dead was not meant as a triumphant victory cry, it was an observation that the old value system was losing its power to guide people. The ideas that had given meaning to countless generations were starting to feel brittle, even obstructive, in a rapidly modernizing world. This erosion of traditional beliefs left society teetering on the edge of nihilism, the unsettling sense that nothing really matters. Nietzsche feared that without a new source of meaning, people would drift aimlessly or cling to outdated rules that no longer made sense. As a counterweight to this looming emptiness, he proposed the Ubermensch, not as a flesh-and-blood individual we might bump into on the street, but as an ideal worth striving for, much like the Stoic sage functions as a guiding star for the Stoics. It may be unreachable in a literal sense, yet aiming at it can orient and elevate our lives. Reaching toward this ideal demands two main qualities, creativity and strength. Creativity is essential because we must invent our own values once the old ones crumble. Strength is equally vital because forging a new path often invites criticism, misunderstanding, or outright hostility from those still invested in familiar norms. Nietzsche understood that most people prefer what he called the herd mentality, going along with what everyone else thinks, and he accused mainstream moral systems of promoting a slave morality, a code built largely on fear and obedience. Imagine a workplace where everyone follows outdated procedures simply because that's how we've always done it. An aspiring Ubermensch in that office would question the routine, design a better system, and calmly withstand colleagues who resist change. The point is not rebellion for its own sake, the point is to replace passive acceptance with active value creation, thereby charting a life that feels authentically one's own. It is also worth emphasizing what the Ubermensch is not. Nietzsche was not urging people to become tyrants or to dominate others. Rather, he wanted individuals to master themselves, to become a yesayer, someone who affirms life even in the face of uncertainty and meaninglessness. In practical terms, this could look like developing personal principles through thoughtful reflection, then living by them consistently, refining them when evidence or experience suggests a better way. By doing so, we avoid being lost in the moral vacuum that can follow the collapse of traditional structures. Think of a novice musician who, after years of rigid classical training, begins to compose her own music. She doesn't throw away technical skill, instead, she uses that foundation to create something uniquely hers. In a similar fashion, the Ubermensch builds upon the raw material of human experience, history, culture, knowledge, yet molds it into values that express individual vitality and purpose. Nietzsche's broader philosophy can feel intimidating, especially to beginners, but the takeaway is straightforward. When external authorities fade, we have both the freedom and the responsibility to determine what matters. The journey toward the Ubermensch is the journey of taking that responsibility seriously. It calls for imagination to see possibilities others overlook and resilience to pursue them despite resistance. In summary, the Ubermensch represents an aspirational standard against the backdrop of a world where old certainties are crumbling. It invites each of us to rise above herd thinking and slave morality, craft our own guiding principles, and live with courageous self-direction. While the full realization of this ideal may be impossible, the pursuit of it can infuse our lives with meaning, energy, and a sense of authorship over our destinies. In the contrast between conformity and legacy values imposed by societal, religious, or other cultural systems, and what Nietzsche termed master morality, we find a fascinating exploration of human nature. Slave morality, as Nietzsche saw it, originated from the oppressed, the powerless, and the downtrodden. This morality was born out of a reaction and resentment towards those who possessed power, self-determination, and strength. Unable to compete with these qualities, the powerless developed their own moral system that allowed them to feel morally superior despite their circumstances. Master morality celebrates power and excellence, whereas slave morality turns this on its head, labeling strength, ambition, and pride as evil or distasteful, and instead valuing humility, patience, meekness, and self-sacrifice as the highest virtues. It's crucial to note that Nietzsche is not criticizing the virtues of humility, patience, or self-sacrifice themselves, nor is he viewing the downtrodden or less powerful as inferior. Instead, he is concerned about the risk of resentment that can arise from adopting a slave morality mindset. Nietzsche critiques the slave morality, not the individuals, seeing universal values as stifling for human potential and creativity. Similarly, there's a misconception that Nietzsche believes the master mentality to be ideal. While traits like self-determination and creativity are preferable, Nietzsche's main critique lies in the adherence to universal values set by the masses. In reality, Nietzsche is far more interested in the potential for individuals to transcend both systems and create their own values. This is where we find the concept of the Ubermensch, who does not waste time on resentment or envy, nor does the Ubermensch conform to external expectations. Instead, they focus entirely on creation, crafting new values, ways of living, and possibilities for humanity. Traditional systems imposed by society, religion, or other groups can stifle individual growth and suppress curiosity, creativity, and ambition. In contrast, the Ubermensch examines their beliefs, traditions, and values, pruning and nurturing them like a gardener, directing their vision based on their own principles. This process aligns with Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, which sees life as a striving for growth, creation, and overcoming internal barriers such as anxiety, fear, insecurity, and doubt. In this way, the Ubermensch represents a new possibility for human flourishing, beyond the limitations of slave morality and societal constraints. A journey that allows an individual to exercise their own will to power is fueled by an innate desire for continuous growth. This journey involves breaking free from the constraints that limit one's potential and crafting a unique path through life. While ordinary individuals may perceive chaos, the Ubermensch recognizes the inherent possibilities within it. Where others find solace in tradition, the Ubermensch draws strength from the act of creating something entirely original. It is important to clarify that this pursuit is not centered around personal gain or the desire to dominate others, rather, it is about achieving a profound level of mastery over oneself. This mastery involves overcoming the internal chaos to lead a more fulfilling life. Earlier, we touched upon nihilism, a term often used to describe the belief that life lacks meaning and that there are no intrinsic values, morals, or truths in our surroundings. The concept of the Ubermensch can be seen as nature's response to this dilemma, which Nietzsche identified as a significant threat to Western civilization. With the decline of religious belief and the rise of scientific rationalism, Nietzsche feared that many individuals would struggle to find meaning in a world devoid of God or absolute values to guide them. He was concerned that this could lead to widespread despair, with people feeling that their lives were purposeless and devoid of significance. However, the idea of the Ubermensch provides a remedy to this existential risk. Instead of succumbing to nihilism, individuals have the capacity to forge their own purpose. They can transcend the despair and meaninglessness that may arise from the absence of divine guidance and discover a sense of freedom that comes from self-creation. The Ubermensch partially answers the question of how we can find meaning in a world that lacks inherent meaning. So, how does one become an Ubermensch? It is crucial to understand that Nietzsche's concept of the Ubermensch is not a state that can be easily attained, if at all. Similar to the Stoic sage we discussed previously, the Ubermensch represents an ideal, a state that illustrates our potential. It is a goal to strive for, and even if we do not fully achieve it, the journey itself can lead to personal growth and improvement from where we began. Embarking on this path will undoubtedly present challenges, many of which stem from the necessity of continually overcoming oneself. This journey demands a rigorous level of self-examination, prompting us to question our beliefs, values, biases, and preconceived notions, especially those we have adopted from external influences such as other individuals, groups, traditions, and cultures. It also requires us to step away from the comfortable path paved with the values and traditions of the past and venture into the unknown. With that in mind, we can begin with a fundamental step, breaking free from the herd mentality. This refers to the inclination to conform to societal norms and follow the crowd. Nietzsche argues that most people live as part of a herd, adopting the values, beliefs, and expectations passed down by society without ever truly questioning them. They exist in a state of moral comfort, content to follow the paths laid out by tradition, religion, and social expectations. Nietzsche warns that those who cannot obey themselves will inevitably be commanded by others. Therefore, to genuinely become an Ubermensch, one must first cease seeking validation from others and start living according to their own desires and principles. This does not simply mean rebelling for the sake of rebellion, it involves rejecting the unthinking obedience to established values that do not resonate with one's true self. At its core, the Ubermensch embodies independence. It represents an individual who critically evaluates their beliefs and values, rather than simply accepting societal norms. They question everything, authority, tradition, and even their own convictions, until they discover their true, authentic self. This process is encouraged by nature through self-reflection. Are your beliefs genuinely yours, or have they been passed down from your family, religion, or culture? Are your aspirations driven by societal expectations, or do they stem from your personal desires? The Ubermensch is a person with the bravery to face these challenging questions head-on and, if necessary, discard beliefs and values that don't align with their inner self. Nietzsche's concept of the Ubermensch isn't merely a theoretical notion. For some, it's a rallying cry. It serves as a reminder of our potential, urging us to abandon outdated values and inspiring us to forge new paths. We encourage you to engage with this topic. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. To foster discussion, we invite you to share in the comments section what the Ubermensch signifies to you, in the context of nature.